Have you ever wondered what would happen if you woke up in the middle of the night and saw yourself still sleeping? Not a dream, not a hallucination, but you fully conscious floating above that body. Would you panic or be curious? Would you run or move forward? In today's video, you'll be guided through a strange but real journey of a man who was once just ordinary until he began slipping out of his own body. Together, we will explore the first moments he drifted from his physical form, the soul realms from radiant light to shadowy unknowns, the formless beings that communicated emotions more powerfully than words, and most importantly, the deeper meaning of out-of-body experiences, not just to travel far, but to return home to yourself. The middle of this video will reveal the secret of the silver cord, the thread that keeps your soul from getting lost forever, and also the things Monroe never publicly shared in his books, yet have been confirmed by thousands of others. This is Heaven's Thread, a place where true stories of the soul, the afterlife, and inner awakening are told. If you find this content meaningful, leave a comment with the letter Q below to help us keep going. And if you think something could be improved, don't hesitate to comment with the letter E. We're always listening to grow a little better each day. Are you ready? Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and step with me into a world that can only be seen when the soul leaves the body. Was it just a gentle vibration or a calling from another realm? At that time, Robert Monroe wasn't a spiritual seeker, nor was he someone drawn to mysticism. He was a practical man, a media executive, living in a modern world of logic and science. And yet, on one perfectly ordinary night, he felt a wave of vibration rise from his chest and spread throughout his body. No pain, no fear, just a strange sensation, as if his body was somehow shedding a layer. At first, he thought it was a neurological issue, but then it happened again and again, until eventually, those vibrations began pushing him out of himself. Have you ever woken in the middle of the night, unable to move, but feeling like you were somewhere else entirely? Monroe began to experience what we now call a pre-out-of-body state. His physical body stayed still, but his consciousness, his inner self, seemed to drift away, gliding from the bed, rising through the ceiling, and hovering above like a weightless silhouette. He didn't know what to call it. Only that the feeling was more real than waking life. But the strangest part wasn't the sensation. It was a voice, an invisible voice that began to appear inside his mind each time it happened. It didn't sound like a person speaking. It felt more like a thought. That wasn't his. And what did that voice say? I'll let the next part reveal it. Are you ready to hear a whisper from a place no one can see? Because from that moment on, Monroe no longer lived as an ordinary man. He became the first to document out-of-body experiences in a structured, repeatable way. And soon, he stepped into a world where death was not an end, but the first door finally opening. The first thing you see is yourself. One night, Robert Monroe felt his body begin to tremble as usual, but this time, there was a gentle pull, not painful, not resistible, drawing him out. It was no longer just a sensation. It was a real separation. He opened his eyes, but not with his physical ones. He saw everything clearly. The room, the bed, and himself lying motionless below. His face, his posture, all still there, and his awareness was now floating above it. Are you certain that the body is the only place you live? Monroe was fully conscious. He reached out to touch the wall and passed right through it. He drifted through the ceiling with no effort at all, light as air. Suddenly, he was above the roof, looking down at his garden from above. Everything was quiet, magical, and strangely unfamiliar, not like a dream, not like death, but more like a parallel form of existence. And then something pulled him back, forceful, final. He was sucked back into his body, as if falling from the clouds onto solid ground. When he awoke, his body was covered in cold sweat. His heart raced. But inside, there was a profound awakening. From that moment on, Monroe had no more doubts. What he had experienced was not a neurological malfunction, not a dream. It was a separation of the soul and the body. But this was only the beginning, because by the third out-of-body experience, he began seeing beings, not of the human world, no flesh, no speech, but their emotions were stronger than anyone he had ever encountered. Who were they? Where did they come from? And why? Did they already know who he was? The answer lies in the next part. If you could leave your body, where would you go? Robert Monroe began exploring further, moving beyond familiar rooms, rooftops, even entire cities. But then, he entered realms that no longer resembled the human world. Monroe named them Locale I, a place similar to reality, but quieter, colder, more distant. Locale 2. 2. A world where thoughts take form, shifting and responding to mental focus. Locale fees. A completely different dimension, where people existed but lived along a timeline unlike our own. Have you ever had a dream where you just knew you were no longer on Earth? That's exactly how Monroe felt. In Locale 2, he traveled through stations of light, each one a layer of reality, each filled with souls in various states of transformation. Some were bathed in soft white light. Others were surrounded by shadows, trembling and lost. At times, he was pulled into a swirling vortex, like a ribbon of rainbow light, and dropped into a space without gravity, where every thought instantly became a vivid, living scene. But the moment that truly stunned him was when he entered a space and could feel the thoughts of hundreds of souls at once. No voices, just waves of emotion crashing through his mind like a storm. Joy, sorrow, regret, pain, and a nameless longing. He didn't know who they were. He only knew this: they had once lived, they had once loved, and now they were waiting for something. But what were they waiting for? Before he could find out, he sensed an unfamiliar energy approaching. Not human, not a lost soul, but a being of pure energy, formless, shapeless, and deeply intelligent. It didn't speak, yet he could hear it through feeling. And that first encounter, between a human and a being of pure energy, would unfold in the next part of the journey. How do you communicate with something that has no mouth, no eyes, no form? Robert Monroe was drifting in Locale 2. a soul-level reality, when suddenly an energy field approached. It was unlike any soul he had encountered. No human features, no sound, but it caused the entire space around him to fall into deep stillness, like the silence before meditation. And then something strange happened. He began to hear its thoughts, not through his ears, but through direct inner sensation, like a melody with no notes, yet powerful enough to tighten his chest. Have you ever felt that someone understood you completely, without needing to say a word? Monroe called this being an intelligent presence. It gave no name. It only flowed into him as a stream of awareness, a sense of total safety, the feeling of being completely accepted, without judgment, and a kind of love, without object, without condition. When he asked questions through thought, it answered instantly, not with data or language, but with inner knowing, as if he had always known the answer, but never dared to believe it. You are not your body. You are awareness. Beyond all form, that was the first message he received. And with that, old layers of belief began to fall away. Ideas about humans, souls, even God, suddenly felt small compared to the existential experience happening in that moment. He wanted to stay, to learn, to merge into that energy. But just as he began to merge, something urgent happened. The silver cord, the thread connecting body and soul, began to tremble violently. He felt himself being pulled back, like a jolt ripping through every layer of awareness. Why, who, or what was calling him back? What would happen if the cord snapped? And would he ever see that being of light again? What happens if you can't return to your body? Robert Monroe was immersed in a profound out-of-body experience, when suddenly a powerful force yanked him back, like a surge of electricity shooting in reverse. Everything shattered like glass. The light recoiled, and he found himself falling, as if plummeting from an invisible height. Before he could process what was happening, he opened his eyes back in bed, heart racing, drenched in sweat, with the sensation of having just passed through a gentle death. There is a cord, and if you don't feel it, you might never know you're alive. Monroe called it the silver cord, not a cord in the physical sense, but a thin, radiant energy field that connects the physical body and the soul during an out-of-body state. He described it as, it stretches, it vibrates when danger is near, and if pulled too hard, it snaps the soul back into the body, no matter how far away you are. But what happens if that cord breaks? Monroe never dared to find out, and in many of his later journeys, whenever he ventured too far, he would sense a subtle warning from the cord itself, a kind of inner signal, wordless, formless, just a wave urging him to return. Sometimes he resisted, sometimes he obeyed, but once he almost couldn't come back. Another presence had tried to hold him there. Who or what would want to prevent a soul from returning to its body? Monroe never revealed much. He left only a brief note in his journal. There are realms that do not want you to leave. Once you enter, you must find your own way out. What held him back that time? And was that place a kind of hell? We will enter the darkest realm he ever encountered. In part 6, when fear appears in the invisible world. If there is darkness even in the soul world, would you dare to enter? Robert Monroe once believed that the soul realms were peaceful, gentle, full of light, until one night, he was pulled into a different space, completely dark, cold, silent in a way that chilled him to the bone. No colors, no voices, no clear forms, only the overwhelming sense of being watched. And then he heard whispering, not clear words, but sharp as a blade. Have you ever felt a fear that didn't come from the outside, but from deep within? Monroe came face to face with dark entities. They didn't attack physically, but radiated a field of energy that drained him completely. He described it as having all positive emotion pulled out of him. Faith, love, light, all faded, leaving behind only a hollow panic. No one screamed. No sound was made. Only the quiet shattering of consciousness from within. Was he witnessing his own shadow? After returning from that experience, Monroe didn't write much detail, but he left behind a single line. That dark realm wasn't a place I was taken to. It was something I had carried within me. Was he referring to the fear of abandonment, or a moment in his past when he lost his faith? No one knows for sure. Only that, after that night, he completely changed how he approached his journeys beyond the body. But there was one thing that haunted him for years after. In that realm of darkness, he saw a small soul curled up in silence, not asking, not speaking, just looking at him, with eyes he could never forget. Who was it? A fragment of memory, a soul waiting for redemption? Or was it himself in another life? We will continue this story in Part 7, The Purpose of Leaving the Body. Is out-of-body travel just an adventure, or an invitation to return to your true self? After dozens of journeys, after crossing through light, darkness, and wordless encounters, Robert Monroe began to realize something. It's not about how far you go. It's about what you bring back. He wrote, "We don't leave the body to escape life, but to understand how to live it more fully, with our entire soul." Are you living as a soul, or just as a body that breathes? Monroe once saw himself as an overworked man. He asked little from the world except success, but his out-of-body experiences forced him to face his real emotions, the loneliness he had buried, the desires he had never dared to admit, and the mistakes his heart never had the chance to apologize for. He began to understand. Out-of-body travel isn't about proving something mystical. It's a tool for deep healing, a way to reach the layers of memory trapped in the unconscious. Each journey became a reminder. You are not limited to this body. You were once light. You have been to places with no words, no time, and you chose to come back, to complete something. Monroe believed each of us has the ability to move beyond the physical shell and touch the eternal wisdom within. We don't need to wait until death to understand the soul's realm, because even during deep sleep, your soul has already begun its journey. But if your soul can leave each night, then during the day, when you're awake, is it fully present? This is the question that led Monroe to establish the Monroe Institute, a place where he and his colleagues studied brainwave frequencies, guided meditation, and states of expanded consciousness. And then, during one deep session, he received a strange vision, a corridor of light with no end in sight, where souls were walking forward, but none ever looked back. Where did that corridor lead, and what waited behind the final door? We will step into the conclusion. In Part 8, What Monroe Left Behind for Humanity. There are people who leave this world, but leave doors forever open. Robert Monroe was not just a pioneer in out-of-body experiences. He was a man who turned a personal journey into a path that thousands would later follow. From those first confusing soul journeys, Monroe devoted the rest of his life to studying states of consciousness. He went on to establish the Monroe Institute, one of the world's leading centers for brainwave research and soul exploration. There, he and his team developed the hemisync audio technology, which helps synchronize the two hemispheres of the brain, unlocking levels of awareness beyond ordinary perception. It has been used to help the terminally ill overcome fear of death, help ordinary people reconnect with their forgotten spiritual selves, and help the lost rediscover the light within. He proved one thing clearly: you don't need to leave the physical world to find your soul. You only need to listen deep enough, and the soul will begin to speak. And then he passed, gently, peacefully. Some say that in his final moment, he smiled, because he knew he wasn't really dying. He was simply continuing another journey, deeper, farther, and freer. We have just walked together through the mysterious and moving out-of-body journey of Robert Monroe, the man who showed that death is not the end, but a doorway to a deeper layer of life. From the first strange vibrations to realms of shifting light and shadow, from formless beings to the fragile silver cord between two worlds, we've learned that not everything can be seen with the eyes, not every pain belongs to the body, and not every journey begins with a step. Sometimes it begins in stillness, as your soul quietly slips from your body, and all that remains is you. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong here, if you've ever heard a whisper from some deeper realm, you're not lost. You're simply on your way home. In the next video, I'll share one of the most heartbreaking moments in Monroe's journey, when he encountered the soul of a small child who may have been himself in a past life. If you'd like to hear more, comment next below. And if this video touched your heart, leave the letter Q as a quiet reminder. I am still on the path of awakening.